Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Dante. With me, I have Pool Party, Teo, and Megan. We also have a few participants with us. You want to take over?
Yeah, and I'm Pool Party. Everyone kind of knows me at Theo. And today we're going to be, just kind of going over the general fact of what we think of the election, where it's going to go, and what we can do to protect our portfolio as much as we can, no matter how the election turns out. So I'm just going to start off with a couple simple facts. Right here on my screen, I have a map of the United States. Anything that's in red is what we consider a Republican state, so which is Trump's party. Anything that's in blue, Democrats, which is currently Joe Biden's party. Anything that is purple will be a swing state, and then anything in the lighter shades of either blue or red, they will be the ones who voted 3 out of the 4 election years for either Republican or Democrat. So I say that is very important. I would also consider probably the light red and light blue swing states in my book, just because in the off chance that they do end up voting for the opposing party, that can really affect how our portfolio is going to play out. And all this information is based on the past 4 election years in 2004, 2008, 12, and 16.
One thing that's interesting is Florida. So Florida has always been quite the mess. That said, a lot of wealthy individuals in the Northeast, Connecticut, New York, uh, have moved to Florida just due to increase in taxes. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more red in Florida.
And then also on that note, I would also like to take California into consideration on that same note. California, I believe, has one of the highest sales tax and merchants tax in the United States currently. I think they're sitting at I think 9.5%.
Gee,
So also take that into consideration while voting because I do know a lot of wealthy individuals are also considering moving out of California, like and relocating in either Las Vegas or any other state that pretty much has less taxes because once you become a millionaire and you make a lot of money and you're living in California, like yes, you're paying for the nice weather and all that stuff, but you also now have to count in for especially because of COVID, all the homelessness that's happening in Cali. You also have to take in everyone who has, say, drug addictions and whatnot. And that's just plaguing on the street. And COVID didn't make it any better. With all these taxes that millionaires are paying, they don't really see where their money is going. And it's practically I'm putting in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in taxes, but where is my money going to? Like the problem isn't improving, it's just every day it gets worse and worse. So you're pretty much getting a lot less bang for your buck considering, say, if you move to a different state.
big time, yeah.
And then next, I want to take in kind of the demographic of our voters and kind of where their household income lays. So right here, I have the demographic set up. So as you can see, under 30, 30 to 50, 50 to 100, and etc. That's all by the thousands. So just take that into consideration. So as you can see, um, for Clinton, everyone that was practically under 50, making under 50 grand, voted for a I mean, Democratic Party, just on the set where typically Demo Democrats are known for pretty much being progressive and trying to get universal health care and whatnot. And you can see why someone in a lower tax bracket would benefit from that. It's like, oh, get more health care, everyone gets it. Wow, such a great idea.
Yeah, food stamps.
Food stamps, EBT, affordable housing, pretty much everything under the umbrella that would need government assistance, even like, free college and whatnot.
Yeah, one thing that I think is going to be interesting is I don't know if it was the last election, but um, I recall seeing something that it's the lowest turnout of voters. This is the last election or so, but if I had to guess, this is probably going to be um, record-breaking votes. Assuming that ballots aren't lost and whatnot.
Oh, and then on that same note, I also wanted to bring a fact up about Florida that I missed earlier. Florida has a special election program where you can choose to vote early. And a lot of Democrats who end up moving there are voting a lot earlier than all the Republicans, just because Trump said, oh, it can get lost in the mail, just come to the poll days and vote. So I also want to take that into consideration of any headlines that you might be seeing where like Democrats are leading. You also have to take into fact that Trump's literally telling everyone, oh, come to the polls and vote there on election day.
Wait, so absentee ballots are already being counted?
Yeah, I was looking at it. I was looking at it earlier while we were doing like pretty much this Google Docs and whatnot. Some of them are already being counted ahead of the election day.
Whoa.
Like just by the sheer numbers of like who's voting in.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Gee.
So right now currently Democrats just kind of have that edge just because they are doing absentee ballots and they're sending it in a lot more because they don't want to get with everything going on right now, you don't want to be in line with like 100, 200 people trying to cast in your vote.
Yeah.
Most Trump supporters, they prefer to do it in person because they don't trust mail-in ballots because they follow Trump. And that's just how some things are going to play out during this election.
Definitely.
And then on top of that, now I kind of want to go into how our portfolio will be looking. Well, not per se will be looking, but what is favored and what we can do to improve our portfolio. As you know, Trump is a very big, like, talks person for bringing back all mining jobs and that type of stuff. Anything that has to do with gas, he's a very big fan of that. So ExxonMobil, Chevron, Energy Select, um, and just pretty much practically any oil big company. That's what me and Dante wanted to go on long. Me and Dante, we talked about this, I think, what, last week about ExxonMobil. He asked me how I felt about going long with ExxonMobil. And to be honest, if Trump does win, ExxonMobil long is the way to go. But currently, right now, I really don't know how elections are going to play out.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely up in the air right now.
And with that, I want to say don't don't try to throw all your eggs in one basket if you are like, say heavy on all these oil companies or like, all the big banks, that type of stuff. I know some of our bread and butters have come from like, shorting banks, energy, and whatnot. But I do advise to, especially since it is an election year, try to keep your portfolio a little bit smaller than what you would usually have. This is where I would say cash is king.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I personally plan on having at least 20% cash, and this is coming off of like right now. I think I'm 1.5 times leveraged, so I'm borrowing money to trade. That said, within the next, I want to say 2-3 weeks max, I'll start to trim exposure, uh, especially on those most vulnerable by the elections.
Yeah, on top of that, so Cash is king. I'm also slowly gonna start trimming back on tech. And then the reason why I say tech specifically, if you guys have been keeping up with the news, there's a lot of what I think antitrust um, cases that are about to get turned on to some of the biggest tech companies: Google, Amazon, Facebook. Yeah, I'm not too sure if Apple's on the list, but in that same note, it's I would probably stay away from tech for a little bit, especially during an election year, just because depending who ends up in the Oval Office, that can swing those probes either way.
Yeah. So I yesterday I had this discussion with uh, some guys at BlackRock, and regardless of who's winning, the big tech companies, um, they're both parties agree that they make way too much money. So they do plan on putting up some sort of regulation. Looking back 3 months, there was a lot of news, from Google and Facebook, Amazon, but you haven't heard much of it because all focus right now is on the elections. So once elections are over, if I had to guess, that'd be something that would definitely be on the table.
Yeah, so that's just kind of our thought of how things would go, and now we're gonna go on to Biden, which I think is kind of interesting in my point. So obviously he's practically going to be shorting everything that Donald Trump supports, anything that has to do with big banks, oil, and just in that kind of sense. Biden wants to be about solar energy and all this renewable energy. He wants to be the guy who, you know, pretty much turns us green, wants us to rejoin the Paris Accords and whatnot. Something I want to bring up about Biden, I actually wanted to ask Megan about this. If one thing I wanted to put up was cannabis. I wasn't too sure of how cannabis would be playing out if Biden won, but I think there would be a big jump in it because I know Biden was, I guess, pro marijuana or like pro for, I guess, medical marijuana and helps of like science and health for like cures and stuff, I think.
I could chime in for that a little bit if you don't mind, but Joe, yeah, he's very pro cannabis in terms of like getting it federally legal, solely because like if you look at the general landscape for a lot of the people in cannabis, yes, there are a lot of whales, but majority is um, for the lack of a better word, like African Americans in the United States. They're part of the lesser demographic of like how much money they make per year. So I think that's why he has a lot of support for it. There were a lot of bills and legislations that were in the work to legalize it on a federal level, but that got hindered, especially with the COVID pandemic that sort of swept the United States. Like everything that was cannabis related took a backseat. So all these bills that were trying to be lobbied and pushed through just got cut off because the government had to worry more about COVID than anything else, really. So even right now, it's still on the back burner from my knowledge. But if Joe becomes president, I know that's going to get pushed forward probably a lot quicker than if Trump was elected president.
Yeah, I have a question. So, you know, uh, Bernie Sanders was obviously like, you know, wants all Americans to smoke weed, right? Um, do you think that, I guess, his push towards legalizing marijuana was just a way to capture more votes? Because he was vice president for 8 years. He could have, pushed towards something, uh, with President Obama.
Yeah, I sort of like for me, I was always under the assumption that like Bernie and Well, the left in general is like pushing towards legalization of marijuana solely because they could use that to take all the people who are wrongfully persecuted and like take them out of jail, create another avenue. Because like honestly, like cannabis, yes, for the longest time, you know, it was considered very illegal. But the thing is, like now with like more research, we're finding out like cannabis is something similar to alcohol, right? Like alcohol used to be prohibited for a very long time, and now it's pretty rampant around the United States, around the world, because it's like widely accepted. I think they're trying to push something similar, like a similar agenda to cannabis as well. Like as long as it's like tightly regulated and everything like that, it could be run properly. But the issue is it's not run properly right now. Like even though we're trying to push for it to become federally legal, there's still a lot of steps that the United States needs to take before it becomes federally legal, because the black market, the illegal market, it's so rampant that it's going to take them a very long time to get this all in order. Because if I was to give like an imaginary size of like how large the white market is comparably to the black market, I would say the white market is about 30% of the market, and the black market is 70%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a huge gap difference.
Can you repeat those numbers?
So white market, all these legal markets are only about 30% of the business that's actually happening in cannabis. The black market, which is the legal aspect of it, is still running rampant. I would say it's about like 70% of the businesses that happen in cannabis right now.
And is this globally or?
No, in the United States. In the United States.
Does that take into consideration the drug cartels in Mexico?
No, it doesn't actually. That's just homegrown U.S. stuff. If you consider like Mexican cartel, it sort of runs a little bit more rampant. But then the thing is like, so I don't want to go like too into detail about it, but initially the Mexican cartels like owned a lot of the cannabis business, especially coming into the United States. But in like the past 4 to 5 years, it's actually become more of like a homegrown thing. Like there's more Americans who are actually growing. The farms here are getting significantly larger. It's because you take out that import tax, if you really think about it. Like Mexican cartels, yes, they can get you a bunch at a cheaper price, but you're paying a tax for them bringing it into the country. You know what I mean? Because they did it through illegal channels, whatnot. So there's always a price point attached to it. But like people in the United States have an easier time moving it from state to state illegally, comparably to the Mexican cartel. So that business is solely for, when I mentioned the 30/70, it's solely for the United States. So basically, I'm thinking they have a firm understanding of like 30 to 70, and then they're trying to shift it the other way. So the white market is larger than the black market. I think that's like their number one goal right now, because for them to really make money off of this, they have to tax it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's like the number one thing. Like if 70% of the black market is running rampant and they're not making anything from tax from it, that's the main issue. I think that's like one of the biggest reasons why they're trying to push for the legalization of it being federally legal. So they can actually have a grasp on the tax and everything that comes with it.
So I personally have a medical card, but I don't think that I'm charged sales tax when purchasing.
So I don't know how it works or it differs from state to state, but in California, if you get yourself a medical card, you pay less of the recreational sales tax. So the regular recreational sales tax in California is 15% on your total. And if you're holding a medical card, that actually lessens to 8%. So it's about half. You get half off on the tax, but that does not include state tax or sales tax. So when you regularly buy cannabis, you're paying 3 separate taxes. You're paying like your city tax, your state tax, and the tax for just marijuana in general.
Now, does the government get a cut of the sales tax generated through the sale of recreational marijuana?
Yeah, they do. They have to actually. That's why each state, right now, the state of cannabis is a little bit weird because, like, yes, United States is a country, but every single state operates differently. So, like, the state tax that California might get, let's say you go to Oregon, it might work completely differently than California. And like that's like one of the main issues that comes with it as well, because I don't know federally how they account for all the taxes. Like I don't know if the state pools the taxes and then gives it to the federal state or anything like that. I'm not too deep in the knowledge of how that actually works. So I think if they get it federally legal, that means our government could create a bill or legislation of how the tax is going to work that every other state is going to have to fall in line under. So I think that's like their main goal right now. Because California, yes, there's a ton of cannabis going around here. Yes, the white market is very prevalent, but I don't know if our set government is actually reaping a lot of the rewards from cannabis, or if it's only California that's really reaping the rewards from taxes.
I can actually chime in on that part. I have a friend who ended up moving to Colorado during that big growing rush that everyone happened, and it's actually just the state that is benefiting from it. Just because one, it's not federally legal, so it's just literally the state reaping in the taxes for that specific kind of industry. It's literally just going to Colorado and whatever they end up doing with the money. It doesn't go to the federal government yet because under federal regulation, it's still considered not per se illegal. It's been decriminalized across the board, but it's still not something that every state is kind of accepting. So they haven't had a wide general bill of what to do with it. So right now it's just kind of up to the state of what they want to do with that tax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So from my knowledge right now, California is doing a bunch of grants for like people who are suffering under COVID. And I've actually found out through a person that I was working in the black market with that a lot of that grant money is actually tax money coming from cannabis. They were just holding on to it. They weren't doing anything with the taxes. Like Colorado did a lot with their taxes.
Okay.
They spent a lot of their money in schools and everything like that. But California hasn't had like that moment where we actually see what the cannabis tax has paid for yet. Because if you look at 2018, 2019, it was billions. It was billions of dollars that came from the white market cannabis industry. But we haven't seen
in just Colorado or
no, just California, bro. Just California. Yeah, just California. So 2018, they made 2.8 billion off of taxes,
and that's probably a conservative number too, because I'm sure there's some sort of under the table transactions and whatnot.
And there's probably a ton, but yeah. So we haven't seen California do anything with it. Like right when I saw the tax reform, I was like, yo, you guys better pay for our streets, like construction. Like we're paying these taxes for a reason, but yeah, we haven't seen anything come from it. And I think that's another issue too. Like there's no real transparency when it comes to cannabis in terms of like tax paid and everything as well. So if it becomes federally legal, like all of that is going to have to turn into an open book, I believe. So I think there's benefits from it, and it's dependent on the person, but I think it'll be very beneficial if it becomes federally legal.
Yeah, I'd find it a power move if Trump decided to favor legalization of marijuana. I think he'd gain a lot of voters.
Oh, definitely.
But that said, the chances of that happening, little to none, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's not enough lobbying power on his side because, like, for the most part, the people who are lobbying for cannabis are all from the left. It's not really from the right. I mentioned it earlier, but it's based on demographic. If you really look at it, the people who are working in the cannabis industry, they're usually like grouped into the people who make like 50,000 or less per year. So it's not really the people who are buying on the right side. It's all the left that's really lobbying for it.
Damn. All right, Dale, you want to go to, oh, all right, solar renewable energy.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar in the solar renewal.
So
Not like that as much.
the reason I put that there was, I think it's called the Green New Deal. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
He's really pushing for change, like massive change, which also flows into infrastructure. So, regardless of who wins, the amount of underwritten debt to the government and states on, rebuilding roads, bridges, and maintaining the existing infrastructure is massive. So, in my opinion, I think there's a massive opportunity that we can take advantage of, whether that be, 4 months out or 4 years out. Like these are all required.
And then also on that note, solar and infrastructure, regardless if we invest into it or not, it's gonna happen. Like I think solar and renewable energy, those are just things that we won't be avoiding anytime soon. Like sooner or later, it's gonna be like, this is the new standard, this is what we have to follow, and you either like it or not,
Can you actually
Like,
pull up a chart on TAN?
and yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so was
September starts right about here.
all right, so that decline was, just a overall market decline, but
Yeah, market decline all the way down to here, which is about right.
yeah, ever since though.
Ever since though, it's slowly been gaining. Like there hasn't been any. Like if we look back at it, even in July, like it was just consistently going up. Like there was no avoiding it until obviously September, where kind of everything just kind of crashed.
Mhm.
But as you keep going, like everyone's saying sell, 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 but I think it's a really good long hold because
So
there's. Oh,
uh good.
I was just gonna say there's pretty much you can't really avoid it. It's gonna happen regardless.
Yeah. So after the first debate, the polls showed that Biden technically won, and let's find out what date that was. Do you guys know by chance? September 29th. Hot
Everyone,
mess.
to be honest, everyone's saying it was a hot mess. It definitely was. Um, I
Interesting.
don't know. To be honest, like everyone says Biden was the winner, but like I think both people just like
It,
they just both was clowning each other
yeah. Yeah.
right about here.
Okay. So, I mean, it ran up a little prior to that, but
Yeah, had this run up starting on the 24th, all the way up until now. It's still going.
yeah, and that massive spike in volume towards, I want to say it was October or
October,
late September, October.
yeah, October 1st is like this big spike starting right here, just like jumping
Do you see that massive, go right a little bit?
right
Right
here.
there. Yeah, that was, you see that volume?